I love fantasy movies from the 80s. Conan the Barbarian, Return to Oz, Time Bandits, and of course the subject of today's video, The Dark Crystal. The movie is notable because it features no on-screen actors, only puppets being brought to life by the incredible Jim Henson Company. The biggest thing that I've always admired about this movie is the craftsmanship that went into the puppets and the sets, and coming back to the movie as a hobbyist has only deepened that appreciation. Today I'll be unboxing the Dark Crystal board game made by Riverhorse and painting the miniatures that it comes with. The game is basically a semi-cooperative adventure game where you play out the same story as the movie. 2 players play as the Gelflings, Kira and Jen, and 2 players play as the Skeksis, the Chamberlain and Gharzim Master as the game calls him. The players playing the Gelflings attempt to find the shard and bring it to the castle and use it to heal the crystal, and the Skeksis players seek to stop them. I've not had a chance to play through the game yet, and I primarily bought this game for the miniatures, but I probably will try it out at some point. The game showcases a lot of craftsmanship in the components like the board and various game pieces. Riverhorse was able to use stills from the movie and the instruction booklet, and did a great job on all the other artwork as well. I'm an avid board game player, so I'm excited to add this to my collection, but really I was mainly interested in these miniatures. I even managed to find a video interview on YouTube from the man who sculpted the miniatures, where he showed his larger sculptures that he had made that were later scaled down to create the miniatures, and gave his insights into how he went about making them. He revealed some really cool little tidbits. For instance, he got to tour the Jim Henson offices in LA and examine the original costumes from the movie. This actually kind of informed his design decisions, because he reveals that he was considering the reality that puppeteers would need to be inside these costumes and kind of kept that in mind while he was sculpting. I've linked the video below just in case you're interested in checking it out. I decided to start with the Skeksis, because let's be real, they're the stars of the show. Now don't get me wrong, I really like the Gelflings, Jen and Kira, but if you ask anyone if they remember the Dark Crystal, chances are they'll ask something like, is that the movie with those freaky crow monsters? The Skeksis included in the board game are Skek-ung, the Gharzim Master, and Skeksil, the Chamberlain. The Chamberlain is by far my favorite character in the movie. He's just such a great villain. He's got that voice.
It's time to make my move.
He's deceitful and treacherous. He cleverly figures out how to get back in the good graces of the Emperor after he's exiled. He's truly a wretched creature, displaying cowardice, weakness, deceitfulness, and avarice. All that being said, I kinda root for him a tiny bit. Maybe it's because he keeps trying to get back into the castle and find ways to advance, but I think really it's just that Jim Henson's charisma seeps through in his performance. The miniature was a lot of fun to paint. There are tons of great textures that allow for washes to seep into recesses, and good raised bits for airbrushing or dry brushing to highlight easily. The miniature's pose also does a good job of capturing the character of the Chamberlain from the movie. You can see that hint of mischief in his eye and the little curl of his lips. The way he's holding his hands also looks like he's greedily rubbing his hands together. I'd score this mini very highly for both paintability and personality. This brings me to the other Skeksis miniature included in the board game, and I've got a lot to say about it. I hated painting this guy, even though eventually I did land on a paint job that I'm pretty happy with. My biggest issue was that I was trying for ages to do a paint job that would be true to the movie, but that just looked like shit on this mini. Bashing my head against this model for hours eventually made me realize that a completely different color scheme was needed, and that's because this model just doesn't feel like the Skeksis from the movie. The pose is very static and the face is so neutral. This makes for a decent cleric or priest, but just doesn't remind me of the Skeksis at all. This guy in the movie is a total Chad. He's poking at my boy the Chamberlain with a sword, smashing that stone in half, looking super proud when he hits that rock real good. This guy is proud and strong and arrogant. He can't even fathom the idea that someone other than him would be in contention for the throne, He is clearly the Emperor's successor, and the Chamberlain will be punished for challenging him. In the end, I did enjoy the final paint job I did, and I'm sure someone else out there could absolutely nail it and even make it film accurate, but that person wasn't me. I just wish the pose was something like his smug victory pose, or at least him bellowing or something. Like I said, it just feels a bit too static. Now that we've got my least favorite mini out of the way, let's move on to maybe my favorite, and that's Kira. There's a tiny bit of movement here because you can see Kira pulling her hood back, a pose taken directly from the movie, according to the sculptor. The face captures her friendliness and helps convey her willingness to befriend anyone and anything. Kira seems to be well loved by all the creatures of the swamp, from the strange yet majestic landstriders to her ragamuffin little pet Fizzgig. Fizzgig always reminds me of what a tumbleweed might look like if it was merged with a puppy, and including him in the mini was a great idea. It adds a lot of texture to the mini, and it does a good job of being a contrast to Kira's flowing robes and smooth hair. Part of why I liked this mini so much was that I immediately knew exactly what colors I was going to use and how I was going to tackle this mini. Then I just executed on what I had planned, and it more or less came out exactly the way I wanted it to. There are a bunch of little details that I really enjoyed doing on this mini. I painted individual strands of Fizzgig's hair different colors to make him look extra ragamuffin. On Kira's cloak, I used cross-hatching to add a textured feel and make it feel worn. Also, for Kira's hair, I was very happy with how the individual strands of hair turned out, because I managed to make the lines very uniform and thin. Next up, we've got the last mini in the set, and it's our main character, Jen. Jen's a good lad. We see him mourning the loss of his surrogate father, the oldest of the mystics, and he spends most of the movie trying to carry out his dying wish. He's just a little Gelfling in a big old dangerous world. I had always thought of him as being strongly inspired by Frodo, but upon rewatch, I realized who he was truly inspired by: Kermit. In all seriousness, there are probably plenty of heroic characters that inspire Jen, like Frodo and Kermit, but we might as well stick to just analysis of Jen. I also would love to have some sheet music of his ocarina song to learn. I had thought about trying to film myself floating down a river playing his song, but it's way too cold out for that right now. Jen grew up an orphan as the Skeksis killed his parents and he was saved by the Mystics. Growing up in the Mystics village, he got to learn all sorts of interesting things like math and numbers. He puts this knowledge to good use later in the film when he is able to read the ancient Gelfling prophecy and figures out what he needs to do with the shard. This does come after probably his low points in the movie, when he throws the shard away out of frustration. If I was doing a little rewrite of the script, I probably would have expanded on this section a bit and explored some consequences for that action. Like, maybe the shard gets stolen and he has to kind of get over his frustration, so he draws on the memory of his master and surrogate father and thinks about all the love and support that he was given as a child, and that inspires him to carry on and hunt down the shard again. Just something to give him an opportunity to be punished for a bad action and then rewarded for a good action. One small thing that I do like is that when Kira decides to go with him to the castle, Jen points out that she doesn't need to go as well. That at least shows that he appreciates that she is making a sacrifice here and putting her life in jeopardy. I went very simple with the paint job on Jen's mini. Just kind of a base coat, some washes, and then some little highlights. I spent the most time on his face, the little flecks of blue in his hair, and the shard.
The shard.
The shard.
The shard.
The prophecy!
I'm stoked to have a little tribute to this fascinating and beautiful movie in my collection. I think coming back to this movie as a hobbyist has really helped me appreciate just how much time it would have taken to make this movie. All that time crafting the puppets, the costumes, the sets, the level of detail and craftsmanship is off the charts, and that's so important for helping a viewer get immersed in a fantasy world. The board game itself is well made, although I have yet to actually play the game, so I can't make any judgment on how it plays. The miniatures are great, and even though I do have gripes with one of the Skeksis models from kind of a lore accuracy standpoint and my own personal enjoyment, the miniature is well sculpted and paints up well. I hope you enjoyed this little merge of two of my passions, movies and miniatures. I might do another video in the future doing something similar for other old fantasy movies. I know that the same company made a Labyrinth board game, so that might be worth looking into. As far as other channel news, I'm hard at work on a video showing off the next few models for my Turnip 28 armies. Spoiler alert, it involves hand sculpting feathers. If you got this far and enjoyed the video, consider subscribing to the channel. I've been making about 2 videos per month since I started the channel, and I have so many ideas for future videos. I also cover a pretty wide variety of hobby-related topics, so if you're interested in something else like 40k, Turnip 28, Trench Crusade, stick around because I probably have something for you. And with that, I'll just say,
watch the video, viewers, and like and subscribe.